Okay, I am live. Can everybody hear me? Anybody? I know it's super late. It's actually almost past. It's over a 1:15 where I am right now, so I know I'm doing this late. But after this pay-per-view, I'm having trouble sleeping, and so I figured I might as well just put my review out now. And if there's any other late-nighters here, Elijah, welcome to the stream. How are you doing? Jake Owens, welcome. How's everybody doing tonight? Hello, Clark Herman, welcome. All right, you can hear me? Everybody can hear me? Great. What is this cord? What is that? Oh. Oh, my God. All right, that's great. How is everybody doing tonight? This is weird. Definitely worth talking about, so I figured I'd post my review in a live stream format. But what did you all think of AEW's latest pay-per-view effort? That show was something. It was, oh man, yeah. Bret Hart said in his book he felt bad for Bob Backlund when he got squashed like a bug by Diesel in the match where Diesel became world champion. I kind of did too, because I kind of like Bob as a heel. I would have liked to at least get a little bit of time out of him. I mean, I thought Bob did a really good job as a heel. I would have liked to have seen more of that. I'm also getting drunk. This is a good good way to do a pay-per-view stream. Yeah, All Out. Well, there's one thing that's going to dominate the discussion of what happened at All Out. Unfortunately, it kind of impacted the entire pay-per-view. I wouldn't be shocked if Lex Luger passes away soon. I've seen what he looks like today, and it's like he doesn't look good. So, yeah, he doesn't look like he's in the best of health. It's nice to hear that somebody likes Lex Luger. You know, having rewatched Nitro, which, by the way, my next Nitro retrospective video is going to be coming out sometime this week, and it'll be centered around the first half of 1998. It seemed like the main event pissed you off, judging by the tweet. No, a lot of that was me working. A lot of that was just me. The finish of the match, that's just, a lot of that is me working. It didn't really piss me off, but I'll talk about it in a little bit more detail. I was kind of playing that up on Twitter. But, yeah, I guess I'll just jump right into the pay-per-view. All Out, AEW's latest pay-per-view effort, unfortunately is the weakest pay-per-view they've put on thus far. I think that's pretty indisputable at this point. And unfortunately, there was something really bad that happened. I think it was, like, right after the first hour. It was that match. And when that happened, the entire show just kind of felt like a lot of the air just got sucked out of the place. Like, it just felt like it had such a negative impact on the show that it sucked out a lot of the energy. Now, that's not to say that they didn't have good matches. It's not to say that they didn't try hard. It was just that one match is going to dominate so much of the discussion about the pay-per-view that, unfortunately, it kind of puts a dark cloud over everything else. And it felt like everything that happened after that match basically was just trying to make up for what happened there. It was just a very unfortunate thing that happened. And, of course, if you haven't heard, which I'm sure you have because it's been floating all over Twitter and there's been a lot of reaction to it, during the Matt Hardy, very early, I think they were still in like the first minute of the match or whatever, Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara did a spot where they were doing a spot off of a forklift, I think it was, or one of those mechanical lifts. They fall off, go through a table. Matt Hardy, like the top half of his body, missed the table, and his shoulders and the back of his head went right onto the concrete. And it was a a very nasty looking bump. I knew right away. I was like, uh-oh, something went wrong here. And Aubrey Edwards, who was the referee, she threw up the X and was like, something's not right here. And Matt Hardy tried to get up and continue, and you could tell, like, it was just, he was stumbling around. It's like, nope, we got to shut this down. And AEW tried to shut it down, but then they kept going. And Hardy followed Sammy Guevara, and they went off, and they basically just rushed it right into the finish, where they had to climb off a scaffold, and Sammy had to take a bump off the scaffold. But it was like, oh my God, they're not stopping the match? What happened? And they're going to draw a lot of criticism for that. They already have. And I don't really know all the details. I don't know exactly what happened. I know that they clearly tried to stop the match, and Matt just wasn't having it, which I think is what happened. I think Matt just called an audible, and they... But here's the thing. When you get into a situation like that, and I understand that feeling that Matt probably had in his, loopy state. Oh no, Matt's a tough SOB. I'm amazed that he was walking afterwards. And even for the closing spot, he still had to climb up inside that little scaffold area, and I was getting nervous all over again. But, I understand that. I understand that mindset. I have a funny story that that kind of popped into my head. And I'll tell it in a couple minutes. But when it gets to that point, the decision should not be in the hands of the talent. And I think at the end of the day, the match should have been shut down. It should have been stopped. I know it had that stipulation that if Matt loses, he leaves AEW. And my way of getting around that is that I would have just said, look, the match was stopped. There was no winner. That's what I would have said. And you could have taken the story further with Sammy saying, well, I really won the match, so he should be gone, and try to make an angle out of it. But at that point, it's like, nope, this match needs to be stopped. And I saw Rebby Hardy's reaction on Twitter. She's not happy, clearly, and I don't blame her. And she's the type of woman you don't want to make her mad. Like, she gets saucy and angry, and in this case, I can definitely understand why. Yeah, it really negatively impacted the rest of the show, because it felt like the rest of the show was just trying to make up for what happened, and it was unfortunate. And again, how is Matt Hardy doing in AEW? Well, unfortunately, his run's been very snake-bit, because it feels like stuff like this always happens to him. He makes his debut in AEW very early into the pandemic when there's no crowd. He gets hit in the head by Sammy Guevara and gets, starts bleeding everywhere and gets hurt that way. And then this happens. It's like, it just feels like he's just snake bit. And it sucks. It's unfortunate. But, I give him a lot of respect for wanting to continue and trying to continue and being able to do something. But at the same time, it's like, the decision should have been out of his hands. He shouldn't have had any control. He shouldn't have had any control over the decision-making that resulted in that match continuing. He should have been taken out of the discussion. My opinion. But I understand that mindset that, any athlete or any competitor or any artist would have in that situation. I was shocked he was able to get up. I was shocked he was able to get up. That was shocking to me. But to kind of highlight the mindset that Matt Hardy was in, and where I kind of understand where he's coming from, I'm going to tell a stupid story from my childhood that is not in any way comparable to what happened to Matt, but it's like that same kind of, the same moral kind of comes into play, where it's like, look, somebody's hurt, you stop. Somebody's hurt, you stop. And it doesn't matter what the person that's hurt says. You just stop it to err on the side of caution. So I was in 8th grade at this point. And I was on the playground, and we were at the basketball courts, and I wasn't even playing basketball. I think my friends and I, we were just standing in a circle, just kind of like in the room. We were just kind of throwing a ball around. We weren't really doing anything. We were just kind of throwing a ball around and talking. We weren't really doing much. And some kid, I never found out who it was because I didn't get a good look at him and nobody told me. And I think nobody told me because they knew, dude, if Patrick finds out you did this, there's going to be some shit. But some kid came up and he was kicking a basketball around. He kicked the basketball and it flew up and hit me right in the eye. Like, it hit me, like, right in the eye here. And initially, I would open my eye, and I would see nothing but black. And I was like, oh God, I think I've gone blind in my eye. I think I've gone blind. And I was kind of stumbling around. I couldn't get my balance, and I got knocked silly by the hit. And I was like, uh-oh, this ain't good. Like, none of this is good. None of this is good. But I kind of went down to one knee, and I kind of holding my face, which I could feel it swelling up. And I was like, uh-oh, this is bad. And one of my friends comes up to me and is like, Patrick, I'm going to take you over to the nurse and you'll be okay. I was like, no, I don't need to go to the nurse. I'll be fine. I can walk it off. He's like, Patrick, no, you can't. We're going to the nurse. And I was like, no, I'm fine. And I was getting pissed off at him. I was like, I'm not going to the nurse. Fuck you. I didn't say fuck you, but I was in that mindset. And he got stern with me. He was like, Patrick, we're going to the nurse. If I have to drag you there, you're going to the nurse. I go to the nurse, and my eyesight starts coming back at this point, and I can start to see a little bit more clearly. And I remember they tested me a couple of ways. I don't know if it was like a concussion test or what, or to see if I was like conscious or whatever, but they didn't get, they talked about giving me smelling salts, which they didn't do, but, yeah, I tried to no-sell it. I tried to no-sell the injury. And they gave me an ice pack, and I think they had to call my mom and tell them, get permission to give me a Tylenol. And that happened, and that as I was walking back to the classroom, and I guess I finished the school day, so, but my eye, this side of my face, like, I didn't get a black eye, which shocked me. But I did, like, that side of my face, like, got puffy and, like, red and puffy for a while, and I'm walking back to the classroom, and one of the teachers who didn't like me, this was a teacher who did not like me at all, and I didn't like her either, to be perfectly honest. And she sees me with the ice pack up to my face, and she said, Patrick, what did you do now? And I was like, I've never in my life, because I never once, in all my years of school, I never once talked back to a teacher. I almost threw the ice pack down and got in her face and be like, does it look like I did something, motherfucker? Or do I not look like the victim in this situation, motherfucker? Which would have made things worse. But I was pissed off and angry, so. And she was pushing my buttons. Fortunately, my friend was there, and he kind of, was able to defuse the situation. But anyway, my point is, now in no way what happened to me was not as bad as what happened to poor Matt Hardy. But my point is, I was the one that was hurt, and my friend very wisely realized, Patrick, you cannot make decisions right now. We need to go to the nurse. And you're wrong for thinking otherwise. And I fought him. I was like, I don't want to go to the nurse. And he's like, well, too bad. You're going to the nurse. And fortunately, it was nothing that bad. Oh, yeah, this teacher, I'm not going to say her name, but she and I, we butt heads. I remember that situation because it was the closest I ever came to talking bad to a teacher, which I never did. Never once did. But that time, I was like, I wanted to throw my ice pack at her. I was so mad. Oh, God. She was another world of annoying. When Rob Van Dam won the WWE title in 2006, were you happy or what? I was happy. It was a great moment. But anyway, so that's my stupid story to kind of relate, like, what probably happened at All Out. I guarantee you, Matt, and maybe even Sammy Guevara as well, probably thought, you know, oh, we can keep going. Because it's like, no, if you can go, you can go. And I'm sure in Matt's mind, he thought he could still go. Or at least get the finish in. And it's admirable, but at the same time, the decision shouldn't have been his. And I think the decision should have been taken out of his hands. Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Like, nothing like a teacher to really get under your skin, right? But, God, I remember how angry... Because, first of all, my first thought was, I'm going to murder whoever that kid is that kicked the basketball in my face. All I ever heard is that it was a 7th grader. That's all anyone told me. No one gave me a name or a face, because I didn't see him. I just kind of turned around and just saw a basketball flying into my face. Yeah, it's one of those weird things that's been snake bit. But I remember how angry and frustrated I was, so that's why I'm kind of like, Now, that was probably going through Matt Hardy's very clouded mind times about 100. Because it's like, I'm live on pay-per-view. I don't want to, I don't want to shit the bed on pay-per-view. And I think that's what Matt was thinking. Unfortunately, it was like, again, I'll say it again, the decision should not have been his. And, I knew right away that Matt was hurt. Yeah, I knew, because that fall looked bad, and I noticed it's like, he looks out. And then when he got up and tried to do stuff, I'm like, no, he is out. Six-man Hell in a Cell from 2000. I thought it was decent. It was a free-for-all, but I remember thinking it was a good match. Yeah. But, teachers like that are annoying. It sticks out in my mind because I'm like, if there was one time I ever talked back to a teacher, and if my friend had not been there, I would have. I would have said something I would have deeply regretted. I swear that woman worked for Satan. Oh, God, probably did. But yeah, it was super funny. I was like, so my friend, thank God he was there, or else, A, I would have not gone to the nurse, and B, thank God he was there the entire time, because at first I wouldn't have gone to the nurse, and if I had gone to the nurse, I would have come back, had her give me shit, and then I would have probably thrown my ice pack at her, which that wouldn't have gone over well at all. But God, I almost threw the ice pack down. I remember, I was that level of angry. And my friend just kind of had to be like, no, a kid, kicked a ball into his face. Yeah, Matt Sydal didn't have a good night either. Yeah, Matt Sydal, oh God, he shockmastered himself. But yeah, that's basically my thought on the pay-per-view. I think once the Matt Hardy thing happened, it kind of took everybody's minds off of the rest of the show, and the entire show just felt like them trying to catch up rather than go on as normal. And it was, again, very unfortunate. I hope Matt Hardy's okay. I heard that they took him to the hospital, and I know we'll find out more. Again, I'm shocked. I am absolutely shocked that he was able to finish. And then I'm shocked he wasn't just laying there. I'm shocked he got up, to be perfectly honest. You smashed your nose against a window during recess? Why'd you do that? Thoughts on Mox versus MJF? Well, I guess I'll go over the entire card. Let's, now that I'm done talking about the Matt Hardy situation. Oh, another thing I wanted to talk about was the Jim Ross controversy that seems to be brewing up online, where he said something that got him into trouble, and Twitter wants his head on a spike. And it's like, okay. So apparently during the 8-man tag, Anna Jay did a run-in, and she got knocked outside of the ring, and JR made a comment about, was there a wardrobe malfunction? Gee, I hope so. Or some kind of throwaway comment like that. And people saw that as offensive and creepy, and they want Jim Ross fired or whatever, and people are blowing that out of proportion. It's like, I hear stuff like that, people getting upset over stuff like that, and I'm like, this is why we can't have the Attitude Era back. This is why, because you all get super upset over stuff like this. And again, I've said it on a previous video, and I'll say it here, Twitter is not the real world, and we need to stop pandering to these Twitter, mobs, and the cancel culture mobs, and, the things that get so much attention online. They don't represent the majority. I don't think most people that watch that show honestly were offended by what Jim Ross said. But you've got that vocal minority that swell up online, and Twitter, as we all know, is a bastion of horrible. By the way, follow me on Twitter, link in the description. And I don't understand why we constantly pander to these people. I don't get it. I don't get it. And Jim Ross apologized, so I'm just gonna... he got on top of it that quickly to where he apologized for it mid-show on Twitter. Okay. Patrick, I've given up hope for wrestling ever being in your face and controversial. I don't think what he said was that controversial. I mean, Anna Jay's hot. I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, the Super Bowl halftime show this year, I watched Jennifer Lopez and Shakira do belly dances all night long, and it was great. It was wonderful, and every red-blooded heterosexual male in America loved it. And apparently a lot of people got their panties in a bunch about it, but it's like, you know, calm down. And the example I use is like, look, if women get sexually attracted to men, I don't care. Like, you can like what you like. I don't care. I'm not so narcissistic that I expect everybody to like what I like and to feel how I feel. And I don't expect every piece of media that exists to follow my sensibilities. If I was truly offended by something, I just wouldn't watch it. I'd be like, okay, bye. I'll move on to something else. I don't need the media or every single piece of media to reflect my sensibilities. And I think that's where I get mad at a lot of these self-righteous assholes online, because they want everything that exists to meet their sensibilities. And I think that's absolutely crazy. I think it's insane. Oh no, wrestling will never be edgy again. No, it won't. It absolutely won't. Yeah, I mean, Lawler, I mean, Jesus Christ, this is why we need the Attitude Era back. I'm like, that'll never happen. It'll never happen. They will listen to Jerry Lawler for 5 minutes, and that'll be enough to get the show canceled. It's you can't go back to that now. Absolutely can't. But it's one of those things, and it's where, like, that super far, politically correct, hyper, you know, extreme of the left of the political spectrum, they've basically become what the religious right was in the 90s. And the vision I always have in my head is Helen Lovejoy from The Simpsons. Won't somebody please think of the children? It's like no argument, no legitimacy. It's just platitudes and generic emotional outcry. And that's supposed to be enough to get what you want. And for these fuckers, it works most of the time. But my advice to them is to stop being fucking babies and to accept an apology when you get one. And that's the thing. JR apologized. I'm willing to guess it's not going to matter and they're going to keep harping on this. That's my guess, but who knows. What are your thoughts on the DX McMahon's Big Show Hell in a Cell from 2006? I remember hating it. I remember walking out of the room and coming back and going, holy shit, this match is still going. That's my memory of it. But, so I wanted to talk about that and to say, hashtag Jim Ross did nothing wrong, at least in regards to his comment about Anna Jay. And Anna Jay's, she wears skimpy outfits. She's trying to put her sexuality over, is she not? Like, am I wrong to think that? Yeah, well, I'll tell you how PC culture is ruining everything. Apparently, I've been watching Tailspin on Disney Plus because I've been working my way through the Disney afternoon shows. And I noticed that on the counter list it said 63 episodes. I'm like, that's an odd number. Normally it's 65. Because the first run syndicated shows, typically it's like a 65 episode season. And there's a reason for that based on the schedule. Yeah, Anna Jay is hot. You're completely right on that. But so why are there 63 episodes? Oh yeah, some episodes got banned like years ago. And there's two episodes of Tailspin. There's a couple episodes of Darkwing Duck. There's an episode of DuckTales that got banned. Fortunately, I have that episode on DVD, so it's fine. And I'm like, why are we banning episodes? What is going on here? It's like, again, if it's offensive, just don't watch it. Why are you killing my fun? Why do I get negatively impacted because you all can't handle it? Actually, I thought MJF and Moxley was pretty good, but that was probably my favorite match on the show. But yeah, basically my point is hashtag Jim Ross did nothing wrong and he apologized anyway, so let it go. And that should be the end of it, but I don't think it will be the end of it, unfortunately. Because these fuckers, they don't know when to let something die. But I hate to be an asshole about it, but this hyper overreaction to stuff and calling everything racist and sexist and whatever, that's part of why Donald Trump got elected. And so the worst thing that ever happened to you people, like, you hate Donald Trump that much, I'm like, yeah, well, take comfort in the fact that he's partially your fault. So if you want to prevent that from happening in the future, maybe you should stop being babies and stop pissing people off and stop antagonizing them and stop taking things away from them, and then they'll stop voting in a way that'll deliberately piss you off. I think people underestimate, like, how much Trump appeals to people that just want to piss off these fuckers. And, you know, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's like, dude, this is the bed you created. So, it's like, maybe take the fucking hint that people just plain don't fucking like you and will go out of their way to piss you off, even if it's in the, you know, the quiet of the voting booth. It's crazy. Yeah, they did. Like, they absolutely did. That was part of it. That's a huge part of it. They can deny it all they want, but that whole Twitter mob and the Tumblr's even worse than Twitter. You know, those type of people, it's like they're part of the reason that Trump got elected. I mean, tell me I'm wrong. But anyway, going over All Out, the entire show, again, I thought it made more mistakes than the standard AEW pay-per-view outing. They struggled in places, and again, once the Matt Hardy thing happened, I think it took a lot of the wind out of the sails for the show. Yeah, this was not a very good pay-per-view, and again, it was that one mistake. It was the Matt Hardy thing that really took the wind out of the sails, and they just kind of had to make up for it. But going over the entire card, I just pulled it up. We had 2 matches on the pre-show. Joey Janela versus Serpentico. Joey Janela won. That match, I kind of wasn't paying attention to it. I had it on in the background. And we also had Private Party defeating the Dark Order, 2 members of the Dark Order. And that match was very indie-rific. It was just a bunch of people flipping and flopping all over the place. So that was that. So then we get into the main card. Oh, and by the way, speaking about the pre-show, the way they did it by having a red carpet event, which wasn't really a red carpet event, it was just Tony and Dasha Gonzalez standing in front of a little set that they had made up. It wasn't really a red carpet event, so... but they did that. Then they did the hour-long show on TNT, which was just basically a preview package. And then they did the second half of the red carpet event, which had some promos, but not much else. And then they did the actual buy-in pre-show. So it was like, a little too much on the pre-shows there. You probably could have just done the thing on TNT and you would have been fine. I don't know. This pay-per-view will probably be blacklisted in a few months. Yeah, it'll be taken out, even though I paid the $50 for it, it'll be removed from Bleacher Report Live because people were offended. They'll probably go back and censor what JR said. But, yeah. Anyways, so that's my thought on the pre-show. It's like you didn't need to have 4 different pre-shows. I feel like you could have scaled back on that and it would have been fine. Just film a couple promos, do a couple pre-show matches or 1 pre-show match, and just do that. I felt like they overcomplicated it a little bit. But anyway, going into the main card, we started off very bizarrely with the tooth and nail match, which was filmed on site supposedly at Britt Baker's practice. I don't know if that's true. It may have been a set somewhere. Who knows? But it was Big Swole defeating Britt Baker in what some called a cinematic match. I felt like it was more of an Attitude Era style fight or backstage segment is what it kind of felt like. I think they did this because Britt Baker's still not 100% and because Big Swole had that match a couple weeks ago on Dynamite, which was an absolute shitfest. And they said, oh shit, we need to pre-tape this thing because it ain't going to work. What's your opinion on JR's commentary now? He's old and he screws up a bit. He's not the JR of old, but I think that he says a good thing every once in a while, and I think that Tony and Excalibur do a decent job of carrying everything else, so I think they make up for a lot of his weaknesses. But and Taz does a pretty decent job as well, so I think there's enough good commentary to kind of go around. I like Tony. Tony, I think, is great. But yeah, JR is not quite what he used to be. I don't think he should get fired over this. I mean, if they're going to let him go, it's because he's, gotten to a point where he just screws up too much. But it shouldn't be for something like that. But anyway, the tooth and nail match, I thought it was a very odd way to start the show because it's like you start a pay-per-view, you want to start hot. And it feels very weird to start with a match that's not in the arena. And it's like, that just seemed really odd to me. Yes, it felt like one of the backstage hardcore matches for the hardcore title or something like that. That's what it felt like. But they did a couple of gags, like the chattering teeth, which on Twitter I made a comparison to the Arkham Asylum game, where it's like, oh, so if Big Swole breaks the chattering teeth, does she get like she unlock Batman character arc or something? Is that what happens? They did the bit where there was blood all over the table, and I'm like, what the hell was that? Was this some Sweeney Todd shit? Like, what's going on here? And what WCW pay-per-views do you remember JR announcing? He announced a lot of the early 90s, late 80s ones. Great American Bash 92, as an example. He announced the first WCW pay-per-view I ever watched. But anyway, yeah, Big Swole won. Okay, I probably would have had Britt go over because I feel like she's the better character and the better overall talent, but okay. Again, I didn't hate this. I just thought it was a very weird way to start off the show because you want to start off with, like, hot, right? And it felt weird to me to start off with a match that's a pre-tape. I feel like this is the match you start with, or you air this match when you're setting up for the Mimosa Mayhem match, because you got to set up the VATs and everything. It's like, all right, you play that match while you're setting up for that match. That's what I would have done. But anyway, they did some interesting things here, like the use of Novocaine and for the finish, and the use of like anesthesia for the finish. And I'm like, all right, that's different, I guess. It didn't go too long, which I was thankful for that. If this thing had gone like 40 minutes long, like Edge and Orton did at WrestleMania, I would have lost my shit. But yeah, it was what it was. I didn't really think too much of it one way or the other. Baker will inevitably be the one to take the belt off Sheeta. God, I hope so. God, I hope so. If Britt Baker is healthy, I mean, I think she would be like a perfect choice to be the champion. She's by far like the best character they have. Then we had the Young Bucks defeating the Jurassic Express in a tag team match. Good match. It got a little bit pinball-y at points, like the whole like disregarding tag team rules and just having a free-for-all. And outside of that, I thought it was a pretty well-worked, pretty exciting match. I thought Luchasaurus looked great in this. And the Bucks came off as more heelish, which, given what happens in the tag title match, I'm wondering if they're setting up like an elite heel turn down the road. We'll see how that all goes, but I thought this match was enjoyable, and this probably should have been what opened up the pay-per-view. I thought it was a really good, acceptable match. Then after that, we had the 21-man Casino Battle Royale with a bunch of different people in it. A lot of different feuds going on, like Darby and Ricky Starks and Best Friends and Santana and Ortiz and a few other things. And so a lot of different bodies in there. It was a fairly typical like battle royal. Not a whole lot to say other than that. It had its fun moments, like the Cage and Archer like Haas fight towards the end, and Archer won, which I liked. And it looked like they were setting up a spot where Jake was going to bring out the snake and use it to scare Eddie, but I don't know what happened. But they never really... Eddie never sold the snake that you would have... in a way that you thought would have worked. So that whole spot felt weird. And we didn't actually see the snake. Like, if you're going to have Jake carry around a bag, I would like to actually see the snake, and we didn't. So that felt like a missed opportunity. The 21st entrant, the Joker, was Matt Sydal, who may want to change his name to Shockmaster because he came out and did a spot off the top and fell flat on his face. And I was like, oh no. Like, literally, he came out, entered, came in, jumped on the top rope, did a spot that flopped horribly. And I was like, oh man. That's not great. That's not what you want for a debut. And at first I was like, because I thought that the Joker spot was going to be a surprise, like a big surprise. And I know that Rusev was talked about. Rusev had been talked about throughout the day. I know some people were speculating Brock Lesnar, which I'm like, there was no way in hell that Brock Lesnar's... Okay, I'll say it right now. Brock Lesnar is never going to AEW. It's not going to happen. I would be very surprised if it did. So immediately my mind went to the Shockmaster when I saw that, but When Matt Sydal came out initially, I was disappointed because it's like I'm thinking of all the names that were being thrown around. Some people were throwing Pac around and thought maybe he'd finally return to AEW. That didn't happen. No Lesnar, no Rusev, none of that. We got Matt Sydal, and I'm like, okay. And not that I hate Matt Sydal. I don't consider him like a big surprise or anything like that. And then he comes out and botches that spot, and I'm like, oh, no. Not great, but I was happy Archer won. I'm like, that's cool that Archer, the Murder Hawk, got a big win and will be getting a title shot as a result. Yeah, some people thought that Lesnar might show up, and I'm like, no way. No fucking way Lesnar's going there. No, Lesnar will be back in WWE, I guarantee it. If he goes anywhere, he'll go back to WWE. He'll probably wait for when they have crowds back, and then he'll be back on the phone with Vince immediately. But so that was the Battle Royal. Botched a few spots here and there, but I was happy with the result, and it had some fun moments. So then we got the aforementioned Broken Rules match with Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara. I already talked about that. That was a fiasco and a disaster. Then we got the women's match. Hikaru Shida defeating Thunder Rosa, the visiting talent from the NWA. I felt so bad for these girls because they had to go out there and perform right after that Matt Hardy thing just tanked. And again, I think it drew a lot of people's attention away from what they were doing. And people were more concerned about Matt Hardy. I was just, that was where my mind was. Because again, I turn into a den mother when one of the wrestlers get hurt. I just get weirdly concerned and overly protective of them when they get hurt. I remember when Enzo got knocked out. And I was like, is Enzo okay? And Enzo's not even like, nowhere near one of my favorite wrestlers. But I'm like, is Enzo okay? Is Enzo okay? I want to know that Enzo's okay. So that's kind of where my mind was for the rest of the show. And I think back to, like, what was that that TLC pay-per-view where Kairi Sane got knocked loopy. And the other three women in the match had to finish the match. I think it was Becky, Charlotte, and Asuka had to go in there and finish the match. And Kairi Sane was, like, just whacked out of her gourd out there. And it's like, why wasn't that match stopped? But anyway... so Thunder Rosa and Shida, I thought they worked very hard. They got a lot of time, and they worked a pretty good match for what it was. I think a lot of people were distracted because of the whole Matt Hardy situation, but for what it was, I thought they did about as well as anybody could possibly do in such a horrible situation. They probably even got a little bit of extra time because of what happened with Sammy and Matt, because Sammy and Matt obviously lost a lot of time with their match, but it was A+ effort from the ladies. I would say maybe like a B match overall because the crowd was distracted by other things. But the effort was definitely there, and they worked very, very hard. It was nice to see a women's match in AEW that wasn't embarrassing. So, so there's that. Then we got the 8-man tag. Matt Cardona, Scorpio Sky, Dustin Rhodes, and QT Marshall versus members of the Dark Order, Brody Lee, Colt Cabana, Evil Uno, and Stu Grayson. Now, the faces went over here, which I initially disagreed with. I was like, no, I felt like the Dark Order needed to win this match and keep their momentum going, because they got a lot of momentum from Brody Lee's big TNT title victory over Cody. It was like the best thing Dynamite has done in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I really felt like the Dark Order needed to win this. However, post-match, they announced that Dustin Rhodes is getting the TNT title shot against Brody Lee this week on Dynamite. I'm like, okay, so at least there's a method to the madness. I'll let it slide. I'll let it slide. And the match itself, again, strong effort all around. I thought everybody worked hard. And they did that little story ending where Colt Cabana kind of fucked up at the end. Even though Brody Lee had, like, gift-wrapped the win for him. And it'll be interesting to see where Colt Cabana falls in with the Dark Order moving forward. Because I don't think he's, like, officially pledged to them yet. I think, he's still, I think he's still, like, a pledge. He hasn't been officially initiated yet. So, we'll see how all of that goes. But this was the match where JR had the line with Anna Jay that everybody has got bent out of shape over. But, yeah, the match was what it was. It was fine. It was a typical 8-man in a lot of ways. And Dustin looks amazing. Like, it's amazing how good Dustin looks. Like, I'm blown away by it, like, how good and crisp that dude still looks at his age. I got a little confused by his promo and his shirt where it's like 5 decades and 32 years, and I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, 32 years doesn't equal 5 decades. I don't understand. But somebody explained it to me. It's like, no. He started in 88, and then he worked in the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and now the 2020s. So he's been a wrestler in 5 different decades. And I'm like, okay, that makes more sense. That makes a little more sense. And I was thinking a little too literal on what a decade actually means. But, okay, so I'll let that slide. So this match was enjoyable for what it was. And initially I disagreed with the result, but then they explained it away later. So I kind of was like, all right, I'll let that slide. And then they did the tag title match. FTR defeating Kenny Omega and Adam Page to become the new AEW Tag Team Champions. And, yes, I agree. No, Dustin Cody is the best match in company history. That they haven't even come close to topping that yet. But, anyway, tag title match I thought was pretty good. I thought the effort overall was good. Again, the crowd, kind of a problem. I think, again, we're still not there yet. We're still not there where we have the real audience experience yet. It's only partial. I think it's 10% capacity, 15% capacity. So it's like you don't get the energy that you would want from a match like this. But the effort was definitely there. I thought Hangman looked great in this. I thought Hangman looked amazing in this. And FTR, I could watch them work all day long. They're just masters at what they do. And overall, I enjoyed it. And then we got new tag champs out of it. So we're going to be getting Bucks versus FTR down the road. But what happened post-match was interesting, where Omega looked like he was going to attack Hangman for fucking up, but then he didn't, and then he stormed out of the arena basically saying he was done, and he's done with Hangman and done with everything, and kind of encouraging the Bucks to come along with him, again, kind of planting the seeds for like an elite heel turn, so it'll be interesting to see where all of that goes. So that was interesting. But then we got the Mimosa Mayhem match, Orange Cassidy defeating Chris Jericho by knocking him into the tub of mimosa. I thought they were going to have Jericho win, and then Cassidy was going to put him in the... I thought Jericho was going to win by pinning him, and then Jericho was going to... or Orange was going to attack him post-match and throw him into the tub just to kind of send the fans home happy or whatever. But no, Orange just beat him outright. This was fun. I mean, it was a gag match. It was a total comedy match with like all the close falls and the drama of going into the vat and everything. It's like, okay, this is... I kind of like it. It's theatrical and silly, but I kind of like it. But yeah, I thought it was enjoyable for what it was. It was not a not what Meltzer would call a 5-star classic or anything, but it was a fun like goofball match. And I like that they made it clear that you have to have your full body submerged for the win to count, because there were a couple moments where like Orange Cassidy's head went in and he got his hair wet, and Jericho's foot slipped and his foot slipped in, and there were a couple close falls where I'm like, keep your balance, or this is going on Botchamania. Keep your balance, or this is going on Botchamania. And fortunately, there were no major fuck-ups here. And they went out there and put on a silly, fun match, and that was pretty much it. So I enjoyed it for what it was. And then we got the main event, which is probably my favorite match on the show. MJF challenging Jon Moxley for the AEW title with the stipulation that if Jon Moxley uses the paradigm shift, then he would get disqualified and automatically lose the championship. So this was just a down and dirty, very good, old school, brawly, just blood and guts wrestling match. And I was like, you know what? Cornette's going to have a stroke over the Mimosa match. You know what? And I made this point on Twitter, and I'll make it here, because I've been watching a lot of old shows lately, and one of the shows I watched a show that had the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, and he was working with the Midnight Express, and that's something that Cornette was a part of. So when I hear like him get upset about shit and like goofy shit, and I'm like, motherfucker, you were working with the Boogie Woogie Man, who was about as goofy as it gets. And granted, I like Jimmy Valiant. I thought he was a funny character. But he is exactly the type of thing that NWA fans decried about the WWF for as long as I can remember. Where it's like, oh no, the WWF, that's hokey bullshit. And the NWA and Jim Crockett promotion, that's like real wrestling. That's like blood and guts wrestling. And then I see the Boogie Woogie Man flying out there, and I'm like, and Charlie Brown from out of town. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? What are you talking about? But yeah, there's a lot of like inconsistencies like that. Well, And maybe this is something worth doing an entire video on, where it's like, oh, WWE, the WWF in the 80s, it was just entertainment, and they had no wrestling. It's like, their tag division I would put up against anybody. And when you look at the caliber of matches they had in the tag division alone, I mean, that was some pretty good fucking shit. But like the Hart Foundation, the British Bulldogs, and the Killer Bees, and the Young Stallions, and Demolition, and that type of stuff, and Strike Force, and the Brainbusters when they got involved. So it's like, and then Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat went out there at WrestleMania 3 and had a match that was so good it changed the business. So what do you mean, like, there was no real good wrestling in the WWF? I don't know what you're talking about. And then on the other side of things, it's like, oh, NWA, it was real blood and guts wrestling, no gimmicks, none of that. And then I see the Road Warriors and Ric Flair and Sting and the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, and I look at that and I go, it was Starrcade 86 where Cornette fell off the scaffold. I see stuff like that, I'm like, okay, there's some huge, like, incongruencies in the argument here, where it's like, WWF probably had more entertainment, but it had some really good wrestling. And NWA may have been more serious and had longer matches or whatever, but it had some larger-than-life characters who were on the more cartoony side that were great, like the Road Warriors, like Sting, like Ric Flair, like the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant. But it's like, I hear some of those arguments, and it just blows my mind. But anyway, I was getting sidetracked. We have, how long have I been going here? Okay, it's past 2 o'clock. I've been up forever. But this match I actually really enjoyed. I thought it was the best match on the show. I thought it was, again, just a nice, down and dirty, blood and guts wrestling match. MJF got color, and I thought the match generally came off very well, and I really enjoyed it. It was one of those matches that it went over 20 minutes, and I didn't feel it. I was just really enjoying the work that they were doing. So at least the show ended on a high, where I at least enjoyed the main event. And, but then we get to the finish, and I was like, maybe the finish could have been handled a little differently, where Wardlow distracted the referee and threw in the dynamite ring. MJF, like, fumbled with it and couldn't catch it. And so before he could use the ring, Moxley stops him, uses the paradigm shift, and beats him for the win. And, of course, that move was supposed to be illegal in this match, but it happened behind the referee's back, so there's that. And to me, it's like, oh, there should be, like, a controversy there. Like, MJF has a legitimate case to, like, I should be the World Heavyweight Champion, so I wonder if they'll play that up. I hope so. I would hope so, because if I were MJF, I wouldn't let that slide sitting down. I was joking on Twitter. It's like, send out another official. Reverse the decision of the match, because Moxley cheated, or whatever. But, if I were handling that, unless they go somewhere with this in the future, and who knows, and it looks like they're already moving on to Lance Archer as Moxley's next opponent, which should be interesting because they had some good matches in New Japan, but if it were me, I would have been thinking, because to me that finish is like the babyface cheated, basically, and I'm like, I'm not a huge fan of that. I would have probably done something where Moxley looked like he was going to hit the paradigm shift, but then turned it into a different move. Like, he's got him set up for it with the double underhook, but then turns it into, like, a double underhook pile driver instead, or something like that, or a pedigree, or something like that, where it ends up being a completely different move. Yeah, again, they could go somewhere with this where MJF, like, maybe sues the company. It's like, I should be the World Heavyweight Champion. I was robbed, and maybe they could turn an angle into it. We'll see. But yeah, I'm like, if they're not going to go anywhere with this, I would have thought, like, I would have rather they'd... if Moxley's going to win, I would have rather done something a little different than what they did. But other than that, I really enjoyed the match. I thought it was just a nice, well-worked match. But, yeah, All Out, the weakest pay-per-view effort by AEW so far, and it's clear. A lot of that comes from the Matt Hardy situation, which was very unfortunate. I think just, like I said, it sucked the life out of the rest of the show. There were other problems as well. Like, the opener was a very odd choice. The Battle Royal had some botches, poor Matt Sydal. And, like I said, the finish of the main event, probably would have gone a little bit different with it. But, you know, it's not like the worst show I've ever seen, that's for sure. But it's the weakest show that AEW's put on so far, and I think that can't be denied. And, the reaction to this is going to be something that they're going to have to deal with, because I think that there's going to be a huge like negative response to the Matt Hardy situation. Yeah, it's going to be a rough couple of days for them, I think. And it's funny because WWE and Vince McMahon had their controversy a couple days ago with the whole and let me pull it up because I wanted to bring this up. The whole, like, are wrestlers in the WWE, are they independent contractors or are they employees of the WWE? That got brought to a new light where Vince McMahon is basically telling them, you can't have third-party, you can't be involved with third parties and making money off of them. You work for us, you stay with us, and basically controlling what they do. And I'm like, okay, but they're independent contractors, so they should be allowed to. And I'm pulling this up. This is from IRS.gov. The whole, like, let me see. No, where is it? Where is it? Here we go. Okay, this is from IRS.gov, Understanding Employee versus Contractor Designation. Let me see this. Okay, according to the IRS, the general rule is that an individual is an independent contractor if the payer has the right to control or direct only the result of the work and not what will be done and how it will be done. Small businesses should consider all evidence of the degree of control and independence in the employer-worker relationship. Whether a worker is an independent contractor or employee depends on the facts in each situation. So it actually, even the IRS, this sounds very vague and ill-defined, to be perfectly honest. So this is where Vince gets his wiggle room to do that. But to me, if you're not going to allow them to have third-party commitments and those kind of ties, then they should be granted the benefits of a normal employee, which includes health insurance. That's just my take. They use their WWE names in third-party ventures. So if they use their real names, could they get away with it? I mean, that's, again, we're in this weird, like, nexus of, it's like, all right, so do we work for you or not? And I think it's worth bringing up. Yeah, I wonder what Matt and Sammy have planned, because that spot they did, that wasn't even the finish. So that spot they did felt like it could have been a finish. So I don't know, like, what they had planned. I wouldn't say it fell off a cliff and exploded. I would say it fell off a cliff and they, like, jabbed a spike into the side and caught themselves and then struggled as best they could to climb back up. That's how I would describe it. But yeah, that's All Out. Like I said, it's the weakest AEW pay-per-view. Mistakes were made, and I think they're going to catch some shit for it. But again, the biggest mistake they made was allowing the Matt Hardy-Sammy match to continue. That was the biggest mistake they made. Yeah, it's really bizarre, and it's part of that whole thing with wrestlers where it's like, all right, how do you define them? Are they athletes? Are they actors? Because a lot of people say neither, and it's where do you classify them? How do you classify them? It's very bizarre. I mean, the way they'll probably settle this is probably WWE set up their own version of Cameo, which, if that results in The Undertaker singing Happy Birthday to people again, I'm all for it. It wasn't Battleground 2017 bad, so there's that. That's a fair comparison. Rebby Hardy is having a heart attack. Oh, I'm sure she is. I don't blame her one bit. If I were her, I'd be freaking out too. And as I said earlier, she's the type of woman you do not want to piss her off. Because she is a passionate lady. And she gets angry. Let me follow her. Let me pull up her Twitter and see what she's saying right now. I saw the one tweet where she posted the text messages. Let's see. I'm just pulling up Rebby Hardy's tweets. I'm also retweeting MJF because he had a really good tweet. Okay, let's pull up Rebby Hardy. Interesting thing about Rebby Hardy, I actually had a crush on her before she married Matt Hardy and before she got into wrestling. Because she was like a New York Giants fan and she would go to the games. And she was like the closest thing that we had to a cheerleader. And it was like, oh, here's this hot lady that dresses up, that does lingerie photo shoots. And she's a fan of my team, so that's pretty cool. Cameo, I think it's designed, the point of Cameo, I think, is to have like, oh, a kid wants a birthday message, so you can set that up for him, or things like that. But the way it's set up is like, you are gonna get some creeps that asks for some really weird shit. Like, I shudder to think, like, the requests that Alexa Bliss was getting on those things. Guevara should have just pinned Matt after the spot. Well, it was a last man standing match. So the referee would have had to count him down, but the referee, Aubrey Edwards, she just straight up put up the X. She didn't even bother counting. She was like, nope, this is done. So I think she made the right call. Okay, Rebby Hardy, Matt was the #1 idiot in this scenario. I'll let you figure out who #2 was. Also, fuck you. Wow. She ain't happy, and I don't blame her. Oh, Matt is going to get yelled at. Oh, my God. I hope he's okay. That's the thing. I know they took him to the hospital. I really, and above everything, like, more important than the quality of the show, more important than any of the bullshit that I'm talking about, at the end of the day, I just want confirmation that Matt Hardy is okay. Because I get weirdly protective of the wrestlers, and when they get hurt, I get upset, and I turn into like a fucking den mother, and I'm like, I just want Matt to be okay, and if Matt's okay, then we're fine. Cameo is worse than TikTok. Oh my God. Who the hell would even pay for $500 for a shout out from Alexa Bliss? I would not. I would not even consider dropping five. Okay, I'm going to say a wildly sexist thing here, but I don't care because I have liquor in my system. But there is not one famous woman on this planet in the entertainment industry or whatever that is worth me dropping $500 for any reason. Cameo included. I'm like, no, you are not worth $500 just for a shout out. You're not. And that's true of anybody, even the ones that I have a crush on. I'm like, nah, $500. I would rather drop $500 on a woman that I want to marry. That I would date and marry, and that $500 would be spent over a period of time on multiple different dates, and, a sizable, and more than $500 would be spent on an engagement ring. I would never, never, ever drop $500 on a woman for a shout out through Cameo. It's just, no, it would never happen. I would, for a program like Cameo, $100 is too much. I'm like, that is so far beyond what I'm willing to spend for something like that. Matt is really working that unkillable gimmick, right? Right? Did Matt just ask Jeff to hold his beer? I don't know. Well, if you look at the spot, it looked like the table was too close to where they were jumping off of, so I think that's what happened. That's what went wrong. So whoever set it up was the one that fucked up. Literally, I can think of a ton of things that $500 could go to beyond having Alexa Bliss send me a video. That's not even like... And again, I'm going to get in trouble here. It's like, dude, if I'm paying $500, there should be tits involved at least. I mean, for God's sake. Cameo ain't worth it. And I understand people want to make money. I understand it's a pandemic, and, I know OnlyFans is blown up. But OnlyFans doesn't charge $500. At least, as far as I know, they don't charge $500 for anybody. They did. They overshot it bad. It was really bad. But again, the table looked too close to me. But yeah, Cameo, I just don't... I would never even consider asking for a video from anybody. They could have done that. They could have laid more tables out, for sure. Absolutely. So again, somebody behind the scenes at AEW is going to get chewed out for this. And some heads are going to roll, I think. But hopefully Matt is okay. And hopefully we will take this as a learning experience not to do stupid shit like this ever again. That's my hope. Because we don't need people getting hurt. And I'm convinced that the reason the Britt Baker Big Swole match was a pre-tape was because they didn't want Britt to get hurt. I'm convinced that that's the reason they did it. And if that's the reason, good call. But yeah, Botchamania is going to be interesting. Between Matt Sydal and Matt and Sammy, I'm like, jeez. Scott Steiner, I will be so upset when Scott Steiner passes, because I'm legitimately a huge fan of his. I legitimately adore Scott Steiner. So have I pissed off everybody yet? Have I, because I feel like I've been wildly un-PC and sexist on this stream, so I could see myself getting in trouble for this. Will I get canceled next? Hashtag cancel that asshole. AEW is the whole Botchamania episode. It might be. Well, that and the Thunderdome. You gotta include the Thunderdome with, a lot of, the images that people have put up. Do you have to pay to get on the Thunderdome? I'm curious. I don't even know. I never considered it. But is that something that you have to... I would think you'd have to pay for it. I know I'm cool. I mean, I know I'm cool, but Twitter, I don't know. They find out about this. I could be hung up by my shoelaces and, nailed to a wall or something. When Davey Boy passed away, did you know it was only a matter of time before he was going to go? No, I didn't know. I didn't know what Davey Boy's condition, because when he passed away, I hadn't seen him since his WWE run, his last WWE run. Yeah, the Sydal thing, that was a nasty fall. But again, it's like, when I saw he was okay, I was like, okay. But man, Shockmaster, that you do not want to debut like that. Immediately my mind went to the Shockmaster. I was like, oh crap. Oh crap. But, okay, I can stay on for a few more minutes before I go to bed. So, got any more questions for me before I sign off? Oh my goodness. Any more questions before I go? I know some of you are in the chat. Come on, guys. I believe in you. Alright, thanks, Major Tom. Thanks for participating. Thoughts on the Bayley turn on Sasha? It's about time. It's like, are we finally going to get that match? If so, awesome. Favorite band is AC/DC. They're one note as fuck, but they're one trick pony. They got one thing that they do really, really well, but I really appreciate it. Sandeep, you thought MJF would win? I kind of figured he wasn't going to win, but especially when Archer got the title shot, I'm like, okay, there's no way they're going to do a heel versus heel match, so yeah. So I kind of figured he wasn't going to win, but actually, to bring this up, right before the main event, they were hyping up Dynamite, and they talked about the TNT title match, and they also mentioned, we will also hear from the new AEW World Champion. I was like, and he hesitated. He was like, we will hear from the new AEW World Champion or retaining AEW World Champion. I was like, did he just blow the main event? And turns out he didn't, but that was a funny little moment. Do you remember in Bret Hart's book when he talked about Graham James? Doesn't ring a bell. I did read that book, but that name doesn't ring a bell. Favorite wrestling game? The Aki THQ games on N64, starting with WCW NWO Revenge. Or, no, I'm sorry, WCW NWO versus the World, then WCW NWO Revenge, then WrestleMania 2000, then WWF No Mercy. Those are my favorite wrestling games of all time. Wonderful games. They're terrific. That would be funny if that guy pulled a Michael Cole from WrestleMania 15. You know what? I don't remember that. I've heard people talk about it, but I don't remember hearing it. What exactly happened? What did you think of the Mimosa Mayhem match? I thought it was fun and simple. It was just a fun comedy match. Didn't love it, didn't hate it. It was mildly entertaining for what it was. Worst remake, Thundercats Roar. That might be the worst remake I've ever seen. But we're talking about movies. A lot of horror movies have gotten bad remakes. Do you think NXT should move to Tuesdays? I think last week's ratings indicate, or this week's ratings indicate that they should, because they went up and AEW went up, and I'm like, all right, don't be on the same night anymore, and you'll garner a higher audience and have more room for growth. Cole said after WrestleMania you get to hear from the new WWF champion. Okay. I don't remember seeing it, but I remember hearing a lot of people talking about it, which is interesting. There's also that famous story where it's kind of an urban legend where Lex Luger went to a bar the night before WrestleMania 10 and told everybody that he was going to win the title. And then they had, because he spoiled the match with Yokozuna, they had to change their plans and shit and have Yokozuna go over and do the match with Brett in the main event, which apparently is not true, but it's been like this weird urban legend that's been floating around. I would love to see Rock versus Roman Reigns. What's your opinion? Well, heel Roman Reigns against Rock, that might work. Do you think AEW can crack over 1 million? I hope so. We'll see. Worst alcohol you've ever tried? Merlot. That liquor, it tasted like... It's like Ralph Wiggum. It tastes like burning. It tastes like someone took licorice and set it on fire. That's what it tastes like. Do you ever see AEW doing a huge number like a 1.5 or 1.75 or even a 2? Again, I hope so. I want the trend to go up. That's what I want. One day I would love to see... I would love to have audiences like they were in the Monday Night Wars again, but with WCW and WWE. I would love to have that again. Like numbers like that, but I don't know if that's possible in the current climate. All right, I will allow 2 more questions, and then I've got to go. Have you ever tried a little bit of the bubbly? I did. I got some of Jericho's champagne. I got it for Christmas, and I gave a bottle to my family, and we had mimosas on Christmas morning, and it was very good. I liked it. Do you know the story of when Bret Hart got smoothed in Yokozuna's doo-doo? I remember hearing it. I don't remember the details, but that's not fun. Not fun, I would imagine. Have you tried Everclear? I have. That is some strong shit, but it's good. See, that was like... It's strong, but it has like a little bit more of a soothing aftertaste where Merlot feels like I just drank vomit that's on fire. All right, I lied. I'll give you one more question. What was your approach to watching Raw and Nitro during the Monday Night War? I would watch one and tape the other, and depending on like when it was, I would watch when Nitro was hot in like 96, 97, I was watching Nitro live, and then I would watch Raw later. I had because we had more than one TV in the house, I would have the tape running on Raw in another room, and then I'd be watching Nitro, and then the next night I would watch Raw. And that's typically how I did it. And then when Raw got hot in 98, I switched. And I was watching Raw live, and then I was taping Nitro. And then by, like, the midpoint of 99, I pretty much gave up on Nitro. I was like, you know what? I don't even care anymore. And that was the end of that. I've heard the Bad News Brown and Andre story. That is also unfortunate, especially given his name. Bad News Brown got hit with a Bad News Brown. So, on that note, Andre the Giant's diarrhea, we're going to end it here. So thank you, everybody, for participating. I just wanted to come on here real quick and give my thoughts on AEW All Out. Again, heavily flawed show with one major mistake that really took the wind out of the sails for the show. Again, I thought the effort was there. The execution was not, and I think that was the major problem. So it's like, you got to execute. You can have all the best intentions of the world, but you got to execute. And in the case of Matt Hardy's situation, I hope that this is a learning experience. I hope we never get something like this happen again. But that is it. So I think I'm done here. I'm going to have more videos for you later in the week. My next Nitro retrospective is coming. Also, my latest Star Wars review, the Young Jedi Knight series. I know I said I was going to do that sometime last week, but then my original plan for that was to do split it up into 3, because the Young Jedi Knight series is 3 different story arcs. But then I realized these books are so, like, easy to read and they're so quick that I thought I can just do it all in one video, because it really doesn't matter. Because I'm already up to, I started reading them in August, and I'm already up to book 12, and without, like, breaking a sweat. So I figured, all right, I'll just read all 14 books and review it all in one video. So that'll come within the next couple of weeks or so. So be on the lookout for that. But again, that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and y'all enjoy your Labor Day weekend. It's nice to have a long weekend, isn't it? But I'll see you all later.